Bloody Mayhem, the podcast where we talk about true crime and bad behavior in the Midwest.
Each week, we'll bring you 2 stories from the heartland that might break your heart, but we hope to entertain you along the way.
I'm Janet O'Brien.
I'm Tracey Barriner.
Hello!
Hello!
How are you?
I am well, and hello, Muddy Buddies. Thank you so much for being patient with us with a late drop. We are constantly trying to improve your listening experience.
Exactly.
And we have just moved to a 2-mic setup.
2 mics!
Which means that when we recorded this episode, it did not record. So we are doing a re-recording. This is the one and hopefully only time where we actually have kind of heard each other's stories a little bit, but
we gave some time lapse. That way, maybe I would kind of forget a little.
Oh, I can't remember what I did this morning. So yes,
it works out.
It's going to be new again. Everything old is new again.
Exactly. It all works out. It's like my short-term memory is working for me today.
Completely. Who knew? Smoke pot, kids. It's
Oh my god.
All right.
So, you'll get to hear this on Thursday, and everything will just move on like it normally does, unless something else comes up, because life.
All right.
So we have 2 stories today.
We do have 2 stories today.
And I think I start first.
You do.
Okay.
And to be honest, like we're, 34?
This is 34.
Episodes in. Honestly, people are like, oh, do you remember that story you did about... And I'm like, honestly, no, I don't.
We need a spreadsheet.
I'm going to put that together. I do, because otherwise it'll be like, one of these days I'm going to tell you something and you'll be like, Tracey, we talked about this 3 months ago. Where were you?
Somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to start with my story. It's the haunting of the Becker family.
Okay.
So I have been listening to this podcast called Lights Out. It's these 2 guys. They go spooky, but they also do true crime.
Okay.
And just interesting things, and they totally have those ASMR voices.
Oh.
Yeah, they talk like this a lot.
The NPR voices.
Yes.
Everybody, if you really like wet mouth noises, just go ahead and lean in, Janet.
Would you like some of my cupcake?
I'm going to pour you a cup of cocoa and also do my nails. And then I'm going to open this jar of pickles.
Anyway, they're very relaxing to listen to with horrible things they tell about. So I'm going with it. But I listened to their story on this. I also watched a little bit of YouTube and a little bit of Wikipedia, but I mostly got it from them. I'm not going to go completely 150% in like they did, because I think some of it was just meh. But here we go.
I'm sure that the stories are terrifying. I can't stop playing with this new microphone, you guys.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the fact that in 1971, the novel, The Exorcist, came out.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Based on a story from our dear hometown.
Exactly. And as I already know, Tracey's actually friends with the people who live currently in the house where that happened. Well, where the boy was from. So it's just very interesting. I have a really funny quick story about that.
Sure.
A few Halloweens ago, we were driving around looking at Halloween lights, because there's the app on your phone where you can look up Christmas lights. Well, now you can look up Halloween lights on it.
Love it.
So one of them shows the Exorcist house. And I happened to be driving by, because it's on a dead-end street. You go down the street, and I looked over at the house, and I've been past it a few times, and they have put a sign in the window up in the 2nd floor, and it just says, "A ghost."
That sounds about like them. Yeah. No, the family that lives there are beautiful, lovely people that we've known for years and years, and good folks. And like good sports, they're like, come on, like, don't come up and, like, knock on the
Right.
door and ask to be, you know,
No.
like, let in or whatnot. But if you want to drive down, like, drive
Right.
by and slow down.
I saw a ghost.
You know,
The sign said
totally
so.
fine. Totally fine. But both also just really genuinely lovely people that do a lot for their community and like,
Nice.
folks around them.
Awesome.
So shout out, you know who you are. We love you.
So this took place about a year prior to the whole like exorcism craze, because I mean once the book came out, people were like, oh, you know, they started to kind of feel like this is kind of a part of life, real life, you know, like, oh well, maybe that explains some things that happened into my house, even though it's a fictitious book. I mean, well, kind of not really. I mean, it's about the boy, but you know what I mean.
Do we know what year that movie came out? Do you
I
know
think it came out a few years later. I just know the novel came out in 71.
in 71. So by the time the movie comes out, we're
Yes.
kind of at the cusp of, you know, we're ramping up towards that satanic panic and,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
razor blades are going to be in your
Oh
children's.
my God. Also, that will only really happen once. Well, a couple times.
Right.
And it was some guy.
That poisoned his own kids.
Yep. He poisoned his son.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, no, that's not a thing. And people are not going to put drugs in your candy either, because you know what? Drugs are expensive.
Right. And now you can't get any good homemade cookies or like popcorn balls or
It's so
anything anymore.
stupid.
I feel
I
so
know.
bad for today's trick-or-treaters.
Oh, it's so bad. So anyway, this happens a year before the novel comes out. I am going to talk about the first aired Exorcism.
Oh.
It happened on an NBC local news TV program in Chicago. The person involved in this, his name is Edwin Becker. He was born in Chicago in 1945. He didn't have a great childhood. He had an abusively broken home. He spent a lot of time going in and out of Catholic children's institutions.
Oh, okay.
Because, I mean, his family wasn't great, so, you know, he had to go somewhere. As an adult.
And the Catholic Church. Why not?
Right.
When you're already from like a bad situation, please send your child to those people.
They're great. As an adult, he became interested in R&B music, even though he's a white dude. And he was basically a touring musician. Mm-hmm. While on one of his tours, he ended up meeting his future wife, Marcia. They ended up getting married in 1967.
Okay.
June of 1970, they are living in an apartment complex. Marcia ended up becoming pregnant. Now, at this time, landlords could pretty much do whatever they wanted, and they're like, you know what? We don't want a small child in our complex.
So because
they're going to throw them out.
And now they're not married. Are they married?
Yeah, no, they got married.
So they're
in
married
67.
at this point, but they're saying like you can't live here because we don't want children.
Right, exactly. And so they're like, okay, well, the landlord's going to kick us out. What are we going to do? And so they start looking around at other apartments, and they kept running into the same problem.
Nobody wants to rent to a family with a small child.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, as somebody that rents an apartment, I mean, I would live with it, but I also, like, given my druthers.
I would rather not.
I'd rather not.
Right. So they're, like, looking, and then he's like, okay, maybe I need to go a different direction with this. I should start looking at houses. Mm-hmm. He ends up finding about this estate that's going to go up for sale. The property is going to end up being split 5 ways between the 5 kids of whoever owned this house.
Okay.
And the house is going for $16,500.
Wow.
Right?
Do we know what that is in today's money?
Let's see here. Let's.
I'll vamp for a minute. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Gosh, like.
Right. So.
Finding a home.
1970. With the 16500. Oh, right.
I bet it's going to be something that is like completely would be attainable for a lot of folks.
Right. Exactly.
Then, but isn't attainable.
So, Oh no, it tried to put.
It's okay.
It's
Anyway, yeah. The point being,
yeah,
like homes are expensive, but I am curious about this, so we're gonna hang for a minute.
Right, because we want to know.
Eventually, one of the Gilberto families is going to like sue us because we keep using "Girl from Ipanema" as our music.
I love "Girl from Ipanema." Today it would be worth $134,000. Okay, so that's really not horrible.
Reasonably
that's
doable
a reasonable price for a house today.
For a family, like where you have 2 people in the workforce.
Right. So, it's a duplex. Well, they call it a duplex. It's a 2-family flat. It's got, St. Louis.
3 if you count the ghosts.
Exactly. It's got the downstairs, somebody rents the upstairs. That's where they plan on staying.
Right.
The house was built in 1892.
Okay.
And it had not been upkept very well. But because he was only 24 years old, he's like, screw it, I'll fix it up.
Sure.
And
your back doesn't hurt when you're 24.
Exactly.
You have the money to, you have got the time to,
You're not going to reach over and your back go out. Right. Mm-hmm. So, when they end up going into the house, the realtor is with him. And all of a sudden, this old woman, she's kind of covered in filth. She also has a little poodle in her arms that's also kind of covered in filth. And he assumes this is probably one of the tenants that rents the place. And she starts yelling and screaming at him, saying, "We don't want you here." And the real estate agent yells back at the woman and told her to go back into her unit. She did, and she slammed the door.
I'm picturing Carol Kane, but...
Exactly!
Like Lillian from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Or the crazy cat lady from The Simpsons.
Yes, that too. I have become her.
And then when that happened, the realtor says, "I'm sorry, that is the only way to get Myra," the old lady, that's her name, to listen. He's like, you just kind of have to yell at her, and she goes away. They went ahead and went up to the second floor, and the second floor is just ransacked. There's floors broken, there's holes in the wall. Back at this time, probably an elderly person was living there, and the family was assuming, because a lot of elderly people did not really trust banks because they had lived through the Depression.
Right. So they keep your money close.
Right. And so obviously probably the kids went over there and was trying to find the money.
Hole in the mattress.
Right.
Is it in a coffee can in the back of the freezer?
Exactly.
Is it? Yeah.
So then he ends up bringing his wife over, Marcia, who's, pretty pregnant. And she walks in and she is worried because it's kind of, in shambles, but she's like, okay, well, this is what we can afford in Chicago.
Right now, but then also you're about to have a little baby,
right.
You don't...
Yeah. She's just like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to trust you. And then he's like, oh, let me show you the basement. We can put the washer and dryer down there. She takes 2 steps down the stairs and she looks and she goes, I'm never coming down here. Ever. No. Just
bad feeling or just bad?
Feeling.
Okay.
There was 2 small rooms in the basement. One smelled like burning wood because, it was probably heated by wood in the 1800s and early 1900s. And there was another little room that had a lock on it.
Oh.
And he was like, okay, well, we'll just put the washer and dryer on the first floor, which is totally reasonable, especially when you have a small child. You don't want to have to, go
up and down the stairs, and then you have to worry about the kid, when they toddle, following you down the stairs.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't like that either.
Yeah, and that's... I think they're being progressive because that's a thing now. People try to not put their washer and dryer in the basement.
So the basement is storage.
Right.
You go down there when you need to go down there.
Exactly. So Marcia didn't talk about the fact that she could sense the paranormal at this point.
Oh.
And so she did, Edwin kind of knew, but he didn't really believe in that. She was definitely sensing something. She felt uneasy, but didn't want to really, scare him.
Right, and you worry too, you question yourself, am I being silly?
Exactly. So Edwin, you know, he doesn't really believe in it. He's a tech guy. He's working on computers. I don't know what kind of computers you work in 1970s, but I assume they're as big as this dining room.
There were punch cards involved.
Yes, exactly. So he doesn't even negotiate. He ends up buying the house for the $16,500. No down payment. Guess how much the house payment was?
How much?
$160.
Wow. Like a month?
Yes.
That's it?
Yes.
I know people whose electric bills are like...
Mine could be like $200 sometimes.
Wow, really?
It's a big house, but yeah. It's just crazy. So on closing, they go to the closing, and all 5 children are there because they want their portion of the house, you know, their take, and each child has their own lawyer, including the crazy dog lady, the poodle lady. She even is there with her dog. I don't know why, with a lawyer.
I'm picturing them all lined up like Sound of Music with their attorneys behind them.
And he could tell that they did not get along. Like, they were,
sure.
Like, they kind of hated each other. They were, like, at one point, apparently, they were arguing about some kind of fee that the title company was going to charge for some paperwork, and it was like $2.60. And eventually, I think one of the lawyers just pulled money out of their wallet. Like, can we just move on?
Nice.
Like, can we just stop arguing about the $2.60?
Boy, stuff gets contentious, though, when that happens.
Just really...
People get greedy.
Yeah, they do. And then, at this point, I guess Edwin was kind of used to the crazy old lady. Like, he was like, okay, well, she might be crazy, but throwing her out is probably not the best idea. Mm-hmm. And we could really use a little bit of money because I'm going to be working on this house for the next few months.
Right, so her rent is going to be income to kind of, you know...
Yeah, like $100.
You're putting it back into the property. It's a way to invest. It's a no-brainer, you know, like It's a way to invest without having to...
I mean, her rent was $120, but that covers almost the whole mortgage payment. So It's just like, you know what? You can stay here for like 120 days. We're cool with that.
Right.
He's like, will I have to deal with the crazy lady? Sure, but whatever, it's fine.
Can you deal with crazy for 90 days
right.
in order to better yourself for the long term? Sure,
right.
Totally.
So he ends up, and he changes all the locks. Myra apparently her behavior starts to get stranger. She keeps yelling at him more. One day, him and his 14-year-old brother is over, and he's helping paint the second floor. And the crazy lady, Myra, comes into the room laughing like a crazy person.
Okay.
And Edwin goes over, he puts his hands on her shoulders and kind of walks her out of the room and says, okay, come on, let's go back to your floor now.
Right.
Apparently she did this often. She would just come in laughing. And
that is the creepiest thing.
And then she would leave sobbing.
So the laugh comes into crying, and then you're...
Yeah, she'd come in laughing, and then he'd leave, walk about, and then she'd sob. Yeah.
Yikes.
So, while they're getting ready to move in, Edwin, on the second floor, he's looking in one of the closets, and he finds a Ouija board. Now, again, this is 1970. The Ouija boards are, really popular.
They give you one when you move in. It's part of the welcome wagon. You get, one of those bottles of Chianti with the straw across the bottom, and a key to a neighbor's house for swinging, and then a Ouija board. Right.
So he's like, oh, that's nice, and he just tosses it out. His wife, Marcia, finally gives birth, and 3 days later, after giving birth, she comes home with her daughter. Mm-hmm. Now, when Marcia walks in, she could tell there was a change with the house. Again, she could kind of sense paranormal-ish stuff. They started adding more furniture to the house because they're moving in, and things start moving around. They don't really go into specifics about how or what is happening, but moving around is what I get. Edwin did not believe her, though. He just thought, well, she just had a baby. She's been cooped up.
That's right. They gave you, twilight sleep, so you were on some serious drugs for a long time back then. It might take a little bit of time for you to shake those cobwebs off.
Right. He's like, you've been cooped up. You're probably just thinking you're seeing things. Now, this is where I add the advice that when I had Patrick, my mom's advice was just get out of the house. Like, doesn't matter. Put him in the little, pumpkin seat thing and just make sure you get out of the house every day. It will help your mental health.
Fair. Just to put your eyes on something other than the same four walls.
Exactly. And, she's totally right. So I started doing that. Marcia started to become more isolated. Every time she would hang out with her friends, she would talk more about paranormal stuff, and so her friends were kind of like, okay, you're kind of like, why do you keep bringing this up?
Why are you obsessing on this particular thing? You have a brand new baby. Why aren't you?
Right. And then, and she's doing this with her husband as well, Edwin, and he's kind of distancing himself from her because he's like, what is going on? Finally, this starts to put a strain on the marriage, and he was like, okay, how about if I put a phone in the house? Because landlines were kind of expensive back then, so they put a landline in the house, and he would go to work, and he would try to call her, and it would always be busy. Okay. And he's just like, what is going on? And when he would come home, the phone would just be off, like hanging off the hook. Like, not where she took it off the hook, like just hanging on the floor, off the hook.
Right, because if you're going to take and leave your phone off the hook, you're going to put that...
Right. So this was like a daily occurrence.
Okay.
And they're like, what is going on? And so finally they're going, the baby, they're going to go christen the baby. And when they're done with the christening, Edwin said, hey, would you like to come bless our house? Because we just bought this house, and they're good Catholics. And so when they come over, Myra, the lady, the crazy old lady, she starts screaming out the window saying, you shouldn't be here. And Edwin ends up screaming back at Myra, and when they get into the house, he apologized to the priest. He's like, I am so sorry. He's just like, we're trying to be nice, but that's what she does. And the priest starts to do the blessing of the house.
Quick aside.
Yes.
Have I told you the bingo card story?
I don't know.
Okay. So, blessing of things, I grew up Catholic, and blessing of things is like a big, big deal. They have days where you can like bring your animals on the Feast of St. Francis, and the priest comes out and just does like blessing of the pets.
Right.
We used to once a year get to bring a favorite toy or something in for like the feast of whoever was the patron saint of children. I think it's Timothy. Anyway.
Gotcha.
And so I have a teddy bear that I've had since I was a little kid that's been blessed multiple times.
Oh, nice.
And they used to come over, the priests used to go around the congregation and bless the Christmas trees
right.
Around Christmas. Well, my dad always used to like joke with the parish priest and ask him to bless his bingo cards, because Catholics also play... We love drinking and gambling, like they love drinking and gambling. So like my mom and dad always played Friday night bingo.
Right.
And the priest was always like, no, I can't bless your bingo cards.
Right.
Like, this is where we draw the line.
Right.
We'll do your throats, we'll do the dog, we'll do your daughter's toys,
But
like your cars, whatever, but not the bingo cards. Well, so my dad arranged for the parish priest to come over and bless our Christmas tree. And when the priest got there, we hadn't yet put the ornaments on the tree, but he had decorated the entire tree with bingo cards. Like, very, very funny. Ha ha ha. And
see, you're just blessing our tree.
I know, that's right. So, yeah, so that's how this girl learned how to look for a loophole. Anyway, back to our story.
So he starts the blessing, and then when the priest goes into to their daughter's room, he's holding, a vial of holy water, and all of a sudden it just shatters in his hand and falls to the floor. And while he's picking up the pieces, he makes a sign of the cross, and he said he had to leave. And Father Barnes, that was his name, he starts packing up his stuff. And Edwin begged him. He's like, will you just at least finish the blessing of my daughter's room before you go? And so he's like, fine. And he ends up going there, and he does a super fast prayer and basically just runs out of the house. Mm-hmm. Father Barnes refused to come back to finish any other blessing. Edwin then started to believe his house was haunted. he thought he could purge the house himself. Edwin finally decided to check out that one locked room in the basement because he's like, maybe there's something down there. And when he opens it up, he gets the bolt cutters, he cuts off the bolt, and it is filled with pornography.
Oh.
There's like film and pictures, photos. The photos are signed with the name Ben.
Jesus hates it when you spank, Ben. You should have known better, Ben.
At some point, when the paranormal would happen, Edwin would start calling it out. He would call it out as whatever was happening in their house. He would start calling out Ben's name.
Oh.
And at 120 days, finally Myra ends up moving out of the house, the old lady, and it seemed like as soon as she moved out, the activity started to increase.
Wow, weird.
So she might have been like kind of helping them out without them realizing it.
Well, and that might have been why she was so troubled. Is that
like,
she's
you don't belong here.
Taking this on.
Right. So the lights would start going on and off. Doors would open and close. The kitchen items would shift on the countertops. Apparently, at one point, there was a mixer that was like attached to the wall, and it was like hovering above and floating in the air.
Yeah.
I know.
If you have an old lady that's like a little bit witchy that's living in your building and she's not bothering anyone, keep her around. You could do worse.
Right? Edwin would like start to fill up his bathtub. He'd leave, and then when he would come back, the plug would be wrapped around the faucet. Like, he didn't do that. And he's like, what is going on? They would hear footsteps, and sometimes they'd hear voices on the back porch of their house. Christmas of 1970, the family is over. They've invited their family over, and his sick Aunt Helen, I guess she was on hospice or she wasn't doing great. She started wandering around the house, and he's like, oh, she's checking it out. But the way she was looking, it was almost like she was seeing things. It's like, the veil is thinned kind of thing.
Right, because she's close to the other. Yeah, I can see that.
They end up getting a new puppy, and the puppy starts barking at nothing.
Okay.
They also have a cat that apparently hisses at nothing.
Oh, so Cecil.
Yes. After a few months of living in the house, the neighbor down the street invites Edwin over. And he's like, and his name's Walter, and he's like, yeah, come on over, we'll go sit in my basement and drink some whiskey, because that's
what you did. Right. Yeah.
So he sits there, and they're drinking a couple whiskeys, and then Walter's like, okay, let me tell you some things about your house, because I've lived here for a bit. It's like, there was a family that used to live there. The father was abusive. He ended up moving out of the house. The mother ended up staying in the house. She was elderly. She was in a wheelchair. The adult child would never go to the house. The adult child would walk past this house almost every day and wouldn't even look at the house.
And wouldn't even go in to take care of his ailing mother.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Apparently that woman passed away on the first floor in her wheelchair.
Oh.
So, and then he found out, Walter continued to tell him stories of the house. There was another family who lived there. Possible suicide of a mentally ill son in his 20s. And then he brings up Ben. And he's like, yeah, Ben's wife apparently hung herself in the basement of your house.
Oh my gosh. Well, good. Great timing, Walter.
Exactly.
Tell me this now.
And then apparently...
Another keystone?
Exactly. And then apparently there was a son and father who also died in the house, but no information on that. So Edwin is, he's still doing stuff at the house, because when you're redoing a house and living in it, you're still still working.
You're never finished.
Right. So he's on the floor doing something, I don't know, a spot that he's trying to make better, and he ends up seeing a figure, and it's an old woman, but she's standing, and she's there, and then she kind of disappears, and he's like, okay, that's great. And then they end up, because, Myra has moved out, so they were like, okay, we're still going to rent out. So they end up renting to a new tenant. And the tenants started noticing Edwin, the owner of the house, was acting weird. Like, he would go in the basement and start talking to himself. He'd talk to this Ben guy.
Okay.
And the tenants started noticing that their own tools started becoming missing, and their electric would go on and off, and they just assumed, oh, it's just our crazy landlord.
That
Edwin,
Ben is just
stands in the
moving
basement
shit
and talks
and
to
doing
himself, And both couples at separate times would hear the other floor with arguments, and they would just assume, well, it's the tenants arguing, or the tenants would say, oh, it's the landlords, they're arguing, but it was neither of them.
It was just noise that they're both hearing, but it's not.
Right. And Danny, one of the tenants, he was super superstitious. So he was just like, what is going on? Edwin did start trying to record the voices, but every time he'd hit, record and play at the same time on your tape recorder. If you younger people do not know, that's how you used to record. The sounds would stop.
I'm Casey Kasem.
Exactly. The old woman kept reappearing and disappearing. Most likely it was the lady who was in the wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
Edwin was not, he became to believe, but he did not feel threatened by this. And because he kept trying to, basically, how any of the ghost hunters what's the Ghost Adventures?
Right,
with
Zach Bagel-Bites.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, they're trying to be jerks almost.
Come and get me! What are you afraid of? Show yourself!
And then they run away like...
Bring me more hair gel!
They run away like 5-year-olds, like, when something actually happens.
Uh-huh.
So Marcia, his wife, starts getting mad. He's like, you know what? This is stupid. You were being stupid, and you were making this worse. So she ends up moving out for a little while with her daughter.
He fucked around and found out. Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to go home with my parents. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm done with this.
Yeah, you be cuckoo by yourself.
Right. And so things started to escalate more because, Edwin's at this house now by himself, and he's just still being a jerk. The keys, this is what the turnaround happened. One day he's trying to find his keys. He finds his keys, and one of them is bent, like at a 90-degree angle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the stove just happens to turn itself on.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, this is starting to become a problem.
Now
it's becoming a problem.
We knew he'd get there.
So the tenants who live downstairs, they end up moving out because they are tired of the activity. And then Edwin finally is like, okay, I guess Marcia's right. So he goes to her parents' house, and he's like, I am sorry.
Hi.
Hi. Me. It's me.
I'm the problem.
And he's like, I've been pushing too much. Please return. And she's like, okay, we need to find somebody to figure this out. Now, this is 1970. When you open up the Yellow Pages...
Electricians, exorcists, fitness instructors.
And so they start looking into psychics. They get a couple of psychics to come in, and the two of them, like, he immediately can tell they're fraud.
Call me now.
Yeah, exactly. 1-900. So they try to find someone, and then they finally find this one psychic by the name of Joseph de Luis.
Okay.
He is pretty popular. Like, I guess he's, has a lot of advertising. Mm-hmm. But he refuses to come to their house unless it is verified that it's actually haunted. So...
Well, where do you go to get haunting certification? My gosh. You're like, look, dude, I just know that there's a mixer that's been floating in the kitchen, and...
So this new psychic that they want to hire, Joseph hires a reporter to come over to report what's going on. And so this Tom Valentine comes over. I know.
The amount of outsourcing needed for this is hilarious.
It is. It is over the top.
It's like trying to get a contractor. They're like, no, I'm sorry, I need to get a window guy. The window guy needs to get, like, a glass guy. Like...
So he comes over. He verifies. He's like, this bitch up in here, it on it. So Joseph's like, fine, I will come over. So Joseph brings himself and his assistant over, and the assistant, you know how psychics are. They will just say all sorts of words, and if you connect to one
and then
of them,
they can tell. Like, I think that's what a lot of people, psychics do, is that they look for your response, and then they're like, oh yes, absolutely, your mother,
right? Right. So the assistant says bullets, and Edwin's like, oh crap, I found this jar full of bullets in the basement. so this is what sells Edwin. He's like, oh, they gotta be real, so I'm gonna go with them. The both of the psychics believe. I mean, the psychic and psychic assistant believe that there are multiple entities in their house. But this is where it starts to become real, even more real. He says there's an angry man here, which is probably the old abusive guy. There is an elderly woman, which is the woman in the wheelchair. And there is also a younger woman who committed suicide in the garage.
Ben's fiance.
Yeah, and he's like, but he said he was buried. She committed suicide in the basement. He's like, oh no, she committed suicide in the garage, and then the body was put in the basement. So I don't know, right?
Oh.
So they're like, okay, we're gonna hire this guy. The house needs an exorcism, and the media starts contacting Edwin, going, okay, we really love to record this. And he's like, I don't know, I don't want to be put on the spot. But Joseph's like, I will do this for free. This will be my way of getting more publicity. If you could have the news crew come in and record this.
Okay.
And he's like, fine, okay, we need to figure this out.
We need help. We've got to get this taken care of.
Right. So they send a news crew in from NBC, the local news channel in Chicago. They're there for a couple of days, but there's only, basically the first time they air it, it's only like 6 minutes long, because that's how that works. They take like 2 days worth of footage. Everyone is asked to sit in the living room. And they all have crosses. They all have to hold crosses.
Gracious.
And then they go and they set up the dining room as where they're going to do the ceremony. They have a makeshift altar. They have like stuff for communion, holy water, all the whole shebang, And they start to serve communion. And shortly after, Joseph the psychic, he starts to open himself, and he goes into a trance. A strong gust of wind goes through the dining room.
Okay.
But no windows are open.
Oh.
A spirit starts to speak through Joseph. And while this is going on throughout the house, you can hear noises and slamming doors throughout the house. Joseph starts to speak through, whatever's supposedly speaking through him.
Speaking in tongues.
But, it doesn't really make any sense. Edwin is actually able to record during this time, because he has his little recorder that he was trying to record with earlier, and he can hear noises, and at one point he catches a small child on his recording device saying, Mama. It's nice and creepy. William, there's also, during this exorcism, they've hired William, who is a priest that does exorcisms, and he ends up blessing the house, and Joseph falls out of his trance. After the release on TV, if you look at the video, there's a 6-minute video that you can still find on YouTube. At 1 minute and 30-second mark, you can kind of see something peeking in and out of like a doorway. Okay. But you don't know if it's a person, is it a spirit or whatever. Supposedly
a person that turned on the light. Who knows?
And they end up airing this. Now, they spread salt through the house. The case grew in popularity, and things, according to Edwin and Marcia, things started to calm down. In fact, it did not calm down.
Oh. Okay.
They were just so mentally drained from all the circus surrounding their house.
Right. That once that stops, they're like, okay.
Right. And like Joseph, the psychic, he's like, okay, we did an exorcism on your house, but if these are actual spirits and it's not a demon or not whatever, we're not really going to be able to move anything out of your house with an exorcism. If it's just regular spirits are going to do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
So they continue, they just continue to live with this deal. They start hearing shrieking through the house. Like at one point, they're in their bedroom. The dog starts to growl at something. They hear shrieking. It stops. And then the next day, the dog just runs away.
Forever?
Yes.
Oh.
And the neighbors downstairs also had a dog. That same night, their dog also ran away.
Ran away. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I hope that they are on the best, like, Milo and Otis style adventure ever.
But so they believe that was probably the dog sent something, and they were just like, we out, we gotta go, you know? At night, they had a piano, and apparently they could hear the piano.
The piano ran away?
No. They could hear, like, some notes on the piano. And they're just like, this is so crazy. They finally, at one point, they're like, okay, we're ready to move out. This has just been too much. They end up finding another house. The realtor they were using at that time, the realtor was really into paranormal stuff, and he's like, I'll take your house. Mm-hmm. Remember, they bought that house for $16,500.
Right.
Do you know how much they sold it for?
How much?
$10.
Oh my gosh. So they are ready to just take a bath on this.
They tried.
To get out.
And they were just like, you know what? No. So they end up moving out. They wipe their hands of it. Mm-hmm. Now, Edwin and Marcia have been married for over 50 years. They said during this time, I mean, buying a house is stressful. Having your first newborn child is stressful. And then you add a bunch of paranormal stuff on top of it. Mm-hmm. And, psychic coming in, TV. They said that was like the hardest part of their entire marriage was during that time.
Staying married through all of that is a freaking commitment. Exactly. My gosh. Talk about better or worse.
But they stayed married and they,
wow.
They moved on. But that is my story of the first broadcasted exorcism ever.
Gosh. Wow. That is wild.
Yep. So that's my story.
Whew. That is some stuff. My goodness.
So you have a story for me?
I do also have a story for you. Mm-hmm. And I don't have my photos, but that is okay. I only had one anyway because this is taking place like way back when.
Right. You said this was kind of like a sad story, right?
This is a little bit of a sad story.
Right.
I am going to tell you the story of Cecil Barriner.
Okay.
Now, I am vamped for a second. I am going to get my phone because I don't remember the years anymore.
I am vamping for Tracy. Because vamping for Tracy is great. Or we could do the Jeopardy. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
Okay. All right. Actually, so no, this is kind of a more recent story, but there just weren't a whole lot of photos.
Okay, that's okay.
I'm going to talk to you about Cecil Barriner. Cecil, he is 34. He lives in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. This is a super small town, so there aren't a whole lot of sources for this. And I don't know his early history. It seems as though he was in the military at some point in time. But then he ends up in Poplar Bluff. All right, so this is a big city compared to where his girlfriend lives. And this is a place called Tallapoosa, Missouri.
Ooh.
Tallapoosa, Missouri has a population of 78.
Ooh, okay. Tiny.
So we are looking at Shirley Niswonger.
Okay.
So she's 37. She's a couple years older than Cecil. They have a few things in common, and those are mostly drugs.
Yes. Well, small towns, there's not a lot to
What
do
is
there
there to do? Right. Okay. So they hook up in 1993.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Both of them are kind of in and out of jail over the time that they're together. Sometimes they're both in jail. Sometimes just one of them's in jail. Sometimes not. It's the usual small town, like, rotating, revolving door of you're in, you're out.
Right.
There's a lot of meth involved because it's a small town.
Right.
And these people don't have anything else like
to do.
going on. So they get arrested for possession. They get arrested for bar fights. They get arrested for writing bad checks. Just call bingo on your white trash bingo card now.
Yes.
Right? 1996, Shirley has had enough. She calls it off with Cecil. It's an ugly breakup. I mean, you know, when you're talking about people in a town of 78 and there's like a breakup and there's a whole lot of drugs involved, it's never pretty.
Right.
You know, it's never just like, here are your records. Okay, well, here are your sweaters. And we both just like go our own way.
Right.
So it's an ugly, ugly breakup. He, in fact, threatens at this point in time to hurt her son.
Oh, no.
She's got a couple of kids, and so, yeah, he threatens, he's like, well, I'm going to kill your son.
What?
So she's like, no, F you.
Yeah.
And, like, makes a clean break out of it. Soon after, Shirley is back in jail, though.
Oh.
Now, her daughter, her son is a little younger. Her daughter, Candy, is 19.
Okay.
Candy moves in with Shirley's mom. Again, these small town, like that kind of thing.
You end up living with your relatives.
Right. Like a lot of times grandparents are the ones raising the kids.
Right.
So I want to watch this TV show, but like Irene is 74, Candy is 19.
Oh my God. Yes,
and
that would be a great show.
So they're helping each other and all of that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Candy is 19, Irene is 74. Irene is also recently widowed. Shirley's father had passed away the year before, so, you know, she can use a little help around the house.
Absolutely.
Candy is 19. She's old enough to be out on her own, but it's nice to have, like, grandma there to
kind of really in a
take
little.
care of you a little and, you know, cook the food, do your laundry, you know, that sort of thing. So Grandma Irene has bailed Shirley out multiple times.
Oh, I bet.
Mm-hmm. In fact, a couple of times Cecil and Shirley would go to Irene's house. Like, Mom, I just need $20. I just need, you know, like. So Cecil smells money.
Oh.
He thinks he thinks for some reason that Shirley's family has money. You know, Shirley doesn't have any.
No, she doesn't.
But her mom has bailed her out, and when her dad was alive, like, they have bailed her out so many times.
He thinks the parents have
money.
He
thinks the parents have money.
Right.
And he's also mad about the breakup. He's on probation. There was some kind of, I didn't dive down the rabbit hole, but there was some kind of like a holdup or whatnot where he ends up on probation. And they're like, look, you can get out of this, but what you need to do is keep yourself nice for just a couple of years.
Right.
You know? But he can't do that. He can't even do that. So he drops dirty on a pee test. He knows that he has failed his drug test.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you don't contact your probation officer. You don't own up to that. You just decide that you're going to run away from your mess, right? Run away from your mess. That's what works best every single time. So he's like, okay, I'm only going to need, and it's always like a small scheme too. Like, all I need is $1,000. That'll be enough to get me away from here. I can totally evade everything about the justice system if I just had $1,000, right?
Oh my God.
So he's asking her family for $1,000 so he can skip town. Irene talks to him for a little bit about it, but she won't do it. which good,
Right,
you know.
exactly.
You've put enough into this mess,
Right.
you know. So she's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Candy mentions to her aunt, Shirley's sister, that like there's a dude that's been coming around asking for money, and she kind of mentions that in passing, and that will come back into play. The aunt, her name is Debbie, notes that she hasn't heard from anyone in a few days. Not her, well, her sister's in jail.
Right.
But she hasn't heard from her mom, and she hasn't heard from her niece. And she usually hears from them all the time, because you know that they were calling up Aunt Debbie for everything.
Oh, yeah.
Here is a picture of Cecil, by the way.
Yeah, no, he doesn't look
He
awesome.
doesn't look like a good guy.
No, he would be not a guy I would approach.
No. So Aunt Debbie is like, I haven't heard from anybody saying anything about anything happening over there, and this is a small town. So Debbie is like, well, I'm going to drive over.
Right.
And just drop in on them, check on them. This is December of 1996. The house is dark. The Christmas lights are off.
Oh.
That's not good.
No, that's not good.
She goes inside because, you know, why would you ever lock your doors?
Exactly.
Candy's in her bed. And she looks like she's just comfy in the bed, except for the part where her neck is almost completely slashed and she's got a knife stuck 5 inches into her chest cavity.
That is nuts.
Multiple stab wounds.
Ugh.
She is deceased. Her pants are off.
Ugh.
Grandma Irene is out in the hallway. She is also dead. Multiple stab wounds.
Wow.
They start looking around. Well, first of all, Aunt Debbie, they also notice that all of the phones are off the hook, either ripped out or like missing, either torn out so they're completely disabled or they're missing altogether. Also, stuff has been ransacked. When they start looking through, so first of all, there's no phone. She comes in, she finds her mother and her niece dead.
She can't make a phone call.
She can't make a phone call. This is
Because
1996.
We don't have cell phones.
Right. At best, you had a pager.
Exactly.
So she gets out, and it's small town. She drives to the nearest like corner store where their brother works.
Oh, wow.
And so she goes and finds her brother and is like, we need to call the cops. And they call 911 from there. As they go through the apartment, they also notice that the TV and the VCR are both missing as well. And things have been ransacked, like their purses have been torn through. It's hard to say if there was cash or anything that was stolen, but the TV and VCR are missing. But there is a VHS cover for the movie Independence Day, which had just come out.
Nice.
On the floor. So all the phones are ripped out, all of this. They start looking through and try to piece together what happens.
Right.
Police determine that the cause of death is stabbing for both of them. Candy, like I said, the knife is 5 inches deep. So a dollar bill is 6 inches.
Yeah.
So I just know that because I couldn't find my measuring tape earlier this morning, and I needed to know what size bins to order for our upcoming float trip. So I was measuring my shit with a dollar bill this morning. A dollar bill is 6 inches, so this is 5 inches deep.
Wow.
Into her chest cavity.
Yes.
They said forensics would say that it went all the way through her heart on both sides and got stuck in her spinal column.
That is messed up.
I know. This is brutal. They also find a sex toy that is in her anal cavity.
Oh my.
And I'm very sorry, you guys. This is a really, really rough story. We're going to get through the details really quickly, and then we're going to get to the trial, which is the reason that I chose this story. Police start asking around. I mean, it's a very small town, so it takes them like half an hour.
Right.
They find that there is a bank teller in the town that has seen Candy the day before the murder, or the day before the discovery. And they said it's weird. Candy was in the passenger seat of this white sedan and a white mid-sized car, and she was wrapped up in a blanket, and there was a man behind the wheel. And Candy withdraws $1,000 from her account.
Oh, boy.
Weird.
Yeah.
It's also weird because since everybody knows everybody else's business, Candy had just had major back surgery for like a collapsed disc. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
She'd had a disc removed just 4 days ago.
And you do not recover quickly from that.
She shouldn't be riding around in a car.
No.
And it is December, but also, like, it's weird. She's wrapped up in a blanket when they go through the teller's window.
Right.
Teller doesn't recognize the man because he's from the big city, right?
Poplar Bluff.
Of Poplar Bluff, but he's not one of these 78 people, spoiler alert, now 76,
Right.
that live there. Other folks chime in and they know to look for this car. So they're driving around, the cops look around and they note that the TV, the VCR is missing, purses were rifled through, and they found the case for Independence Day. They start looking for the car around town. They find it. And they find Cecil. And he wants to talk to his brother. Like, they bring him in for questioning. He doesn't ask for an attorney, but he's like, I want to talk to my brother. I want to talk to my brother.
Okay.
They bring in his brother, and when talking to his brother, he pretty much confesses to the whole thing.
Wow.
Normally, this would be the wrap-up, but this is where we're just getting started. Cecil goes to trial. In part of the discovery, they find that he has ridden to Tallapoosa. I just like saying Tallapoosa. With a couple of his friends, and he's like, oh, there's a girl that's going to give me some money. That's all he keeps saying is like, I got to go to Tallapoosa, give me a ride. I've got a girl there that's going to give me some money. He's really paranoid. He's acting strange. The woman in the couple that he rides with says he keeps like fussing with this purple velvet Crown Royal bag, which, tell me you're white trash for that. I've got shit like stored in Crown Royal bags downstairs. I too was in my 20s once. He goes to a hotel. Like, his friends take him to Tallapoosa, but then he's like, I'm just going to stick around. And he gets a hotel room. They search the hotel room, and what they find, he has, I know, Blue. He has ropes that are 6 feet in length, cut to 6 feet length, all of them, but multiples. He has something that is a homemade sex tape.
Oh my God.
And it's a home recorded VHS, but it really does literally say on the sticker, homemade sex tape. And it's got scenes and like the minute mark and stuff, you know how you would do on home movies.
Oh my God.
Which, not to say that Cecil was an unsatisfying lover, but the shortest scene on this tape is 12 seconds long. Like, oh, girl, it took you longer to put your panties back on. Also, in the room, the hotel room, crumpled up in the trash can, they find a list of things that are like for first entry, and it's a list of the stuff he's going to need to take to commit murder.
Oh my God.
Like, okay, I'm going to need the handcuffs, I'm going to need a rope, I'm going to need like this, that, and the other. He finds the handcuffs, or they find the handcuffs inside of the Crown Royal bag. Because that's where you keep them. Make your lady feel classy. And if that's not enough stuff, what is? Also, Janet,
Tracy,
this might be the one thing that you remember because this is I can't scrub this from my brain. In the bag, they also find,
I know,
as it's mentioned in the court notes, we don't have an exact count, folks, but over 30 dildos. I don't know why we couldn't get an exact count. They were all right there, but I guess like somebody just got to 30 and stopped counting. All right, look, over 30. This is all we need. And they find the film Independence Day, but without a cover.
That's so weird. How did that end up there?
I know. So there's no video or audio of his conversation with the brother because it wasn't with police, and they were like, oh, well, this isn't really admissible.
Right.
They just didn't record it. So they go to court. Trial number 1. The sex tape and the dildos are admitted as part of... Also, there's so much DNA evidence. Like,
oh, yeah.
There's his blood in the room. There's the grandmother's blood and his blood also in the car. There's all kinds of stuff. They say dildo so many times in this court recording. I've read the whole thing, which was like 100 and some odd pages. And it is... If you drank every time they said dildo, you would not be able to stand up by the time you get to the end of this. They show also the homemade sex tape.
Oh my God.
To prove that the same kinds of knots were tied, because surely she's in jail, but they bring her out to, testify. And she says on the stand that she's been tied up by Cecil and that he's really into rough anal sex.
Oh my God.
So they watch like 2.5 minutes of this film in court.
Jesus.
Where you can't hardly even see the knots, which are supposed to be the point.
Oh my God.
So the jury is she's in the witness stand and the jury is watching her just get can-rammed for a couple of minutes while the defendant is just there like, oh yeah, that's me. I remember that weekend. It was his birthday, Also, like I said, Irene's blood and Cecil's blood are both in the car. And he's already confessed to his brother. They just don't have recording of that.
Right.
So he says that those 6-foot lengths of rope, which the rope and the knots are what prosecution is really like focusing on, because Irene and Candy were both also found bound by the same kind of rope with the same kind of knot. So they're trying to use that to pin the case. But he says that he has these 6-foot pieces of rope because he uses them for roofing jobs.
Okay.
But they're in a bag with 30...
dildos.
Over 30. Dildos. So, because you might need those for roofing too. Like, you never know when you're going to need to pick up and go with that. So the jury sentences him to death.
Wow.
The conviction is overturned, and this is the best part of reading these trial notes. The state contends that the dildos were properly admitted. That is an actual sentence. Anyway, conviction's overturned. We go to trial number 2. They admit all evidence except for now not the dildos and not the sex tape.
Good.
There's still plenty.
Yeah.
So they're like, fine, we'll leave the dildos out of this. They did nothing.
Right.
But now the defense is saying there's a hair on the scene.
Oh.
And there's a hair on the crime scene, and it's not his, and it's not hers. So maybe... and he has admitted to, going in and robbing them. He's got the check, the money. Mm-hmm. There's so much already. But maybe somebody broke in while he just tied them up and did all of the killing and raping and all of that afterwards. Hair on the scene. But it's not his, so it could be someone else. They deliberate, mm-hmm. and the second jury also issues down a death sentence.
Wow.
They go through trial number 3. They remove everything extraneous.
Okay.
And they have he's got a new defense lawyer at this point. A very, very good defense attorney.
Wow.
And he's like, hey, listen, this, the first trial was tainted. The second trial, there's this hair on the scene. Third time... they were by now, some of the jurors might not have known about it, or like might have found out about this, like this, they might not be impartial. And so what ends up happening, and like the attorney asks like for mercy in this case, like I would ask that you would issue this person some compassion. Also, I mean, man, this has been several years now. We're going like 3.5 years.
That is so crazy.
And they just kind of whittle it down and whittle it down. So he is still convicted as guilty, but they give him 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. So he's evading the death sentence, but he is also never going to see the light of day.
Right.
You know, never going to see a free day again. So Cecil Barriner is still in jail today.
Wow.
And I couldn't find anything else about Shirley other than I found a couple of profiles on Facebook that show that she does seem to be still in southern Missouri, and she does still seem to be alive, a grandmother. Like, she got out for whatever she was in for.
Right.
Cecil is still on death row. And then this is the part that was like the big wow for me when I was going through this story. As I was reading the case notes and all of the court records, I discovered that the defense attorney that got him life in prison turns out to have been somebody that I knew from one of my old jobs, and that used to be a regular. And you know,
so crazy.
Like defense attorney, and I was like, I remember having a conversation with that person one time and being like, how do you, like, what do you do when you're defending someone and you're pretty sure that they've done it? And his answer was like, look, it's not up to me to determine their guilt or innocence. It's up to me to make sure that they get a fair trial.
Oh.
Which, I mean, on one hand, you want to be like, you guilty SOB, you did it. But I can understand the respect for that as well. So that was the big, like, what moment? And my sources for this story, murderpedia.org, Small Town Murders Podcast, standarddemocrat.com, and phillipsblack.org. Wow. And that is the story of Cecil Barriner, who will hopefully remain in jail for the rest of his days because he killed 2 innocent people.
Right.
Over $1,000.
That's so insane.
All right.
That's a good story.
Thank you.
I think this is where we take a break.
This is where we take a break. I am going to take Janet out back, and we're going to go hunt for ghosts.
Yes.
And I'm going to show her my copy of Independence Day. And we'll be back with What's Nice.
We'll be back with What's Nice. If you enjoy getting muddy with us, here are some ways you can help support our podcast. Send any suggestions you have to bigmuddymayhem@gmail.com. Like and subscribe to the podcast on the platform where you listen. And of course, leave a good review, which will help reach new listeners. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment in the comments section. Also, we do have a link for Buy Me a Coffee. And that way you can help support our podcast there as well. Join our Facebook group where we can discuss the episodes and hear your suggestions. And of course, tell your friends. And now let's get back to What's Nice.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
All right.
Now we have some What's Nices.
We do. We have some What's Nices. I know that story was a bit of a bummer, so it's time for a little palate cleanser.
Exactly.
All right. What do you have for me, Janet?
So since we're back in Chicago, it seems like I end up there a lot.
There's a lot of What's Nice there.
Right. So I am going to talk about the Wicker Park Secret Agent Supply Company.
Ooh.
Now, this might sound like, woo, what is this? Do they sell things? Well, they don't, but they have a really cool name. They are a nonprofit dedicated to supporting students from the age of 6 to 18 with creative writing skills.
Oh, nice. Okay.
They are open from 11:30 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday.
Okay.
They are basically using what is called the 826 CHI, stands for Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nonprofit creative writing, tutoring, and publishing center dedicated to amplifying the voices of student youth. Their storefront invites our neighbors to learn about our work. Each purchase supports the tuition-free programs. So the programs involve after-school tutoring and writing. There's field trips, writing workshops. There's a teen writers studio.
So I am going to have to keep shopping for my decoder ring. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I know they don't sell
my
it there.
X-ray glasses.
They have in-school projects and community partnerships. They help with student publishing.
That's great.
And they just basically they do a lot of writing skills. Most of the people who work there, they're just volunteers, and it's just a really, really neat program that they have.
That's fair.
The name of this nonprofit used to be The Boring Company.
So they had to make it very exciting to offset the boring
company.
That's right. I mean, if I was walking down a sidewalk and I saw something that said Secret Agent Supply Company, I would turn in.
Exactly.
I would lean in. Oh.
So that is what my What's Nice is in Chicago.
That is lovely. There isn't much in Tallapoosa, Missouri, but it is in New Madrid County. And so what I have found is the Mississippi River Observation Deck.
Nice.
I will put some pictures. And it is kind of like right along the New Madrid Fault.
Wow,
nice. So there's the Mississippi, our big muddy river that we love so much. And they talk a little bit about the history, and they have this giant wooden observation deck where you can go out. And it looks like they decorate for the holidays and stuff.
That is so neat.
But you can learn a little bit of the history, and you can go see the beautiful Big Muddy from there. And so it looks as though it is also part of the Trail of Tears.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a place on the observation deck where if you're feeling brave, you can stand right next to a sign that's like you are standing on the New Madrid fault line. So unless your timing is really, really, really bad, that's probably going to be a good time. And so they talk a little bit about the history of it, and it does look like a really good... one of the nice things about these small towns, there aren't any buildings or anything on either side of the riverfront, so nothing to obstruct your view. Right. You're just getting a look at the river the way that it looks and has always looked.
Nice.
And it looks as though, if you're interested, there is also a little place called Katie's Diner that is next, close to it. And it looks like it's pretty basic, but that baked potato looks like it's done perfectly. And it's getting to be lunchtime, so I am drooling over that. So yes, Mississippi River Deck Observation Center in New Madrid, and that is what is nice, kind of close to Palatusa, Missouri.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I think that this is where we wrap it up. All right. Thank you guys for your patience. We appreciate you. Hopefully you enjoy the new sound. Drop a note in the comments. Let us know how we did.
Exactly.
See if this is better or worse, or if there is anything that you have to recommend. Also, as always, please send episode suggestions and, notes on the shows that we've put together at bigmuddymayhem@gmail.com.
Absolutely.
And we'll look forward to seeing you later on next week.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in and getting muddy with us. And this is where we remind you,
stay Midwest nice.
Stay Midwest nice.